closed session. Matt, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is the time for public comment period. Persons may speak on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Speakers are requested to fill out a speaker card and state their name and address before addressing the board. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments for any item to no more than 3 minutes in order to allow everyone who wishes to speak the opportunity to do so. Groups are asked to limit their comments to a total of 10 minutes. The board shall limit the total time of public comment to 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. If additional time is needed, public comment will continue after the discussion ends. Ms. Ochoa-Grosso.
Yes, we can start really quick. Hi, my name is Regina Ochoa-Grosso. This is my 10th year of teaching, second grade, with a wonderful job share partner at Glorietta School. You can all hear me, right? I have a loud voice even without it. I would love to talk to you more about how our job share has worked so well for all these years, but I need to save that for another time. I came to speak about something different. The changes that have occurred at our district in recent years have culminated in the worst morale of teachers that I have ever experienced. Many even speak about leaving teaching altogether. When the budget cuts hit California schools hard, Orinda teachers were willing to do our share and pick up the slack where cuts were made. Students used to have art 4 times a month and now continue to have it only twice a month. That's 90 minutes of prep time for teachers gone each month. When I tell my friends at other schools that we only have art twice a month, they're surprised that a district like Orinda would continue to make the choice to limit art to twice a month. We used to have a certificated teacher as a librarian, but that position was eliminated. Now, although we have a wonderful school library clerk at Glorietta, teachers are required to accompany students to the library and remain there to supervise. This is a loss of 30 minutes of prep time per week. In addition, students have lost the valuable information and literacy curriculum that was formerly provided by certificated librarians. The state requires 90 minutes of PE per week, but in Orinda School District, PE is taught for 2 30-minute classes per week. Teachers were asked to make up the extra 30 minutes per week that is not taught by PE teachers. Again, more work, less prep time. In my opinion, the most damaging loss to our students was the elimination of a technology teacher at each site. The technology teacher used to plan an in-depth curriculum that followed a continuing and advancing sequence of levels for each grade. There was consistency throughout each school and the district. Right now, even with training, there are very varied levels of teacher knowledge within each grade and school, and in most cases, students are not getting the consistency that they deserve. So not only did we lose the teacher, but now we have to plan computer science lessons with the limited prep time that remains. I love teaching. I didn't get up here to whine. In my 10 years of teaching in Orinda, I have personally felt that there's less regard for teachers over time. Their time and their value to one of the most highly performing districts in the state is not honored. Now at this time, when the district has more funds in their budget, administrators and some school board members have chosen to maintain the bare bones cuts that were made during the difficult budgetary crisis in our state. Teachers are tired. We work hard, most of us working way more hours than our contractual obligations. It's time to reinstate lost prep time, sign fair contracts that are at least on par with neighboring districts, and demonstrate with actions and fair compensation that we are valued. Thank you.
Michelle Calapanis.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Calafatis, and this is my 8th year teaching in Orinda. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. I want to share with you to say how lucky, I want to start by just sharing with you to let you know how lucky I do feel to be surrounded by teachers in Orinda who share a passion for teaching and love the students they work with. I know they love what they do because when I arrived back at school the last week of July to start setting up my classroom and prepare for the start of the year, there were other teachers doing the same. Smiles and enthusiasm were on their faces. This past Friday, when I left Glorietta around 5, there were still teachers in their classrooms getting ready for the upcoming week. Again, smiling with enthusiasm. Anytime I need to meet with a teacher after school to discuss professional development or ask questions, they are always eager to help me. I can truly tell you that the teachers of Orinda love their students and want to see them excel. They put in the extra hours because that's what it takes to create a successful learning environment. When I ask you to look at our salaries and benefit caps to increase them, I'm not asking you because we as teachers want to indulge in luxuries. We're really asking you so that we can support ourselves and our families. As a teacher who is starting a family and looking to buy a home, budgeting has become a large topic in my household. Currently, my husband and I have been looking to purchase a home in the East Bay to raise our family. In order to afford our mortgage, our child care, and other necessities, we're looking at living possibly paycheck to paycheck. That is what it is with 2 incomes coming in right now. I do not tell you this because I want you to feel sorry for me. I chose my career and love what I do. I am only sharing this with you because I know I have to ask myself, because I'm at that point where I have to ask myself, how can I support my family and continue giving to the students I care so deeply about? I know I'm not the only one in this feeling. It has come up several times in conversations with other teachers as we grab a quick bite to eat and rush past each other in our workrooms. I do recognize that we had a 3% increase last year, but that was the first increase in 7 years. We also had 1 year where our benefit cap went up to $1,185, but then it dropped back down to 20%, and now our premiums continue to rise. Unfortunately, with the significant increase in the cost of living and our salaries not keeping up, many of us are having to reconsider staying in our careers or supporting our families. Many seasoned teachers have taken on second jobs in the evenings and on the weekends to support the cost of living in the Bay Area. We are not teachers who want to put other careers first or want to think about changing careers. We're teachers who want to stay working with the community we care about. We are teachers who want our students to succeed and go far. We only ask that you consider increasing salaries and benefit caps to help us sustain the cost of living in this area. We hope you can show your appreciation for us as we love what we do and want to continue seeing your children excel. Thank you.
Charles Shannon, 2nd grade teacher, Orinda president, OEA president. A long predicated teacher shortage has hit the Bay Area, resulting in stiff competition for qualified candidates. A combination of teacher retirements, high attrition rates, lack of new recruits, and increased competition among districts in a post-recession economy has flip-flopped the education job market. It's become an employer's market versus it has become an employee's market versus an employer's market. There is a lot more competition for talent. Fewer people want to become teachers now, and that's a big part of the problem. In 2008, there were almost 45,000 people enrolled in teacher preparation programs in California. By 2013, there were fewer than 20,000 according to the State Commission on Teacher Credentialing. That's fewer teacher candidates enrolled, and that's significant in terms of supply. That worry might seem hard to believe, given that in previous 5 or 6 years, 30,000 California teachers were laid off amid state budget cuts, and college graduates with teaching credentials went begging for a classroom to call their own. With the state budget in the black, schools have more money, and districts with greater percentages of low-income students and English learners get additional funds. That means more money to hire more teachers. On top of that, districts are under a new mandate to reduce class sizes back to a maximum of 24 students in grades K through 3 over the next several years. During the recession, districts increased class size to save money, with some cities reaching 30 or more students per room in early grades. Now the smaller classes will mean demand for more teachers. It's a perfect storm for a teacher shortage, says Eric Hines, Vice President of the California Teachers Association. I think we're on the very cutting edge of it, he said. Educational officials attribute the decline to the teacher layoff and lack of jobs during the recession, making their career less enticing. In addition, teachers have felt blamed for problems facing our public schools, leading to a negative image of the career. But with about half of California's new teachers leaving within 5 years, attrition is a big factor as well. And Richard Ingersoll, professor of education and sociology at the University of Pennsylvania, that had studied this. School districts need to focus more on keeping the teachers they hire. So I ask all of you, school board trustees, what are you going to do to keep the exceptional talent you currently have? Thank you.
Terry Bookbinder? Any other comments from the public on items not relating to items on the agenda? We have some recognitions to make. First of all, Lori Biddle.
She gets sirens. All right, Lori.
I'll read loud. Lori Biddle is a 5th grade teacher at Glorietta. This month we honor Glorietta 5th grade teacher Lori Biddle, who is the district's certificated employee of the month. Ms. Biddle is being recognized for involvement, commitment, and compassion. Her enthusiastic approach, positive energy, and supportive demeanor shine brightly while representing her colleagues on the curriculum committee, the Glorietta Coordinating Council, and the Leadership Advisory Team. As co-advisor of the Student Leader Program, Lori provides guidance and frequent monitoring of those selected to supervise and support recess play. In the classroom, her students describe her as kind, caring, helpful, really smart, and radically awesome. We applaud Ms. Biddle's performance and salute her valuable contributions in support of student success. Jennifer Kuhn. Jennifer Kuhn is the Administrative Secretary for the Curriculum and Instruction. This summer, when the district was without a personnel technician, Jennifer willingly stepped into the role to help support and coordinate all aspects of the hiring process while still maintaining the myriad of responsibilities that are integral to the operation of her own department. Jennifer's can-do positive outlook was demonstrated daily as she was the first contact for more than 45 applicants, and her encouraging, optimistic approach provided a warm and welcoming first impression of our district. Jennifer stepped into the role of personnel technician with her usual grace and composure and provided essential support while the district was in transition, including moving and relocating offices to the new building. The district is grateful for her caring and extremely competent support. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and acted upon by the Board of Trustees in one motion. There is no discussion of these items before the board vote unless a member of the board, public, or staff requests specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar. It is understood the administration recommends approval on all consent items. Each item on the consent calendar approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adopted as recommended.
Chris, I wanted to pull item H. Should I make a motion? I move that we adopt the consent calendar except for item H.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That was unanimous. So we'll move item H from consent to after action item D. Item A, sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials for 2014-15 public hearing resolution.
Good evening. So each year, governing boards are asked to hold a public hearing to certify and ensure that there are sufficiency of materials for students for the school year. And if I were to define what sufficiency of instructional materials is for you, it means that all materials that are designed for use by students and teachers as a learning resource are available to help students acquire the facts, the skills, and the opinions to develop their cognitive processes. And there are the instructional materials may be printed or non-printed and may include textbooks, technology-based materials, and other educational materials and tests. So we typically work before school and through the first 8 weeks of the school year to ensure that all students have the materials they need for us to ensure that they have access to the instruction that's provided in the core subject areas. So tonight we are requesting a public hearing. There was a posting for this public hearing on October 1st, which was more than 10 days before the actual hearing, and then a resolution to be approved.
Thank you so much. I'll now open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item?
Charles Shanogi, President. For the past year, we've been transitioning to the Common Core in math, and we still don't have a math adoption, so it's the feeling of many teachers that we lack sufficient materials for math currently, and that is a hardship. It's a lot of copying, it's a lot of purchasing supplemental materials from Lakeshore or other resources, and so once again, teachers are stepping up and putting a lot of their own resources and time into making sure that they have Common Core transition materials suitable for student learning.
Other comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, I will close this public hearing. Any questions or comments from the board?
I did have a question, it's actually similar to what Charles was just saying. I know, for example, in my daughter's third grade class, when they're piloting math textbooks, I think, so I'm just curious how that works with, how that plays out with this sufficiency of textbooks.
So yes, what I can share with you is for the purposes of compliance for 2014 and 15, the instructional materials is looked at as adoptions that took place prior to July 1st, 2008, which was the last formal adoption cycle. However, unless there have been adoptions by boards since then, we have not had an adoption since then because the state actually put a freeze on all future adoptions until July 2015. So with regard to these requirements, it does require the district to use materials from the same adoption cycle, but different classrooms can be using different materials from different publishers. Does that make sense? So you can be using different publishers in a pilot.
And are they I thought there was something in here about not using, not just relying on photocopied materials, or?
It can be printed or non-printed. It can be digital or a textbook. The most important piece is that students at a grade level have access to what they would need now with the Common Core state standards.
Other questions or comments from the board?
So I have a question. You just mentioned something about the state hadn't adopted since 2008, and yet this is about now, and we just have Common Core, so I'm a little confused. Does this apply to the Common Core?
Yes, it does. Our materials need to be aligned to Common Core state standards, not necessarily to be state adopted. was a new law that went into effect last year in 2013 to amend that.
Is there a motion on this item?
Well, I have one more question for Kathy. So is this saying that our students have the Common Core materials they need? Is that what we're saying by this action item?
It's saying that, that all students at a grade level have access to the materials they need for the instruction that they're receiving. So for example, if we were to, we're not giving a child the resources they need, whether it's printed or not printed, and saying, you know, you'll have to use something else. We're providing a consistent source of materials.
Okay, thank you.
I move that we adopt Resolution 1503, Sufficiency of Textbooks and Instructional Materials for 2014-2015.
Second?
Hudson,
Aye.
Sarah, aye. Julie,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Chris.
Aye. Our school site plans for Del Rey, Gloria, Sleepy Hollow, and Hawaiian.
Yes, thank you. We have 4 single school plans for student achievement before you tonight to be approved. Due to the recent start of the new principal at Wagner Ranch and the formation of the Wagner Ranch Site Council for this year, the Wagner Ranch School Plan will be coming to you next month in November. The purpose of the school plans is to coordinate the educational services for all students, and it also serves as a blueprint and an organizer for an individual school's improvement process. As you know, the School Site Council monitors implementation, evaluates the effectiveness of the planned activities annually, and they approve the plans to bring before you, the board, for your approval. So we have been in transition, as we obviously know, and so I want to talk a little bit about that as we move forward in looking at the plans. For 2014-15, the single school plans are aligned to the Orinda LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan. This is per state guidelines, and there is a concentrated focus on the implementation of the Common Core standards and the preparation for state assessments and the next generation science standards. Each school plan follows a similar format, and just to give you a quick walkthrough, following the table of contents, you find the school vision and the school profile. But behind that is the comprehensive needs assessment section. And in this section, this is where you would find the accomplishments from last year's plan. They're outlined in a summary of targeted areas that also include a summary of improvements that are targeted for this year, and the action pages towards the back of the plan support that. Without the STAR data from last spring, you will see that there is a more limited analysis in this particular area as there have been in previous plans. Each of the plans maintained the data they had from 2013 and the conclusions that they had from there, but the analysis for the goals and the actions and the target improvements actually were identified based on what is outlined on your agenda bill. They're based on last year's improvements and accomplishments, on district assessments. We do have state science assessment results, CELT data, the district LCAP goals, the state requirements for transitioning to Common Core standards in the state assessments, and staff and parent surveys. The API ranking is the 3-year API average that was provided by the Department of Education. So the 2013 STAR data and the 3-year API is in the plan, but it really serves as a culminating ranking from the STAR program era, rather than a base for future comparison. So, and I think that's important to note, that we have that data, we're looking at it, but really as we move forward, we're going to be starting over. We'll be starting over with a new formula for APIs, and those will not be produced until the spring of 2016. We will have state assessment data, but the formula and the performance levels will be very different in their descriptors, and we will be receiving those next summer. There is an AYP section, that is the federal adequate yearly progress. That stays stable this year, there's no change from last year. And then the CELT data is not yet available for 2014-15. So we have the data from 2013-14 that we've pulled manually to insert into the plans. But moving forward, we do anticipate that we will be redesignating approximately 6 students this year. And it looks like we'll have about 25 students who are identified as EL students officially. The school goal section has the specific school plans for improvement this year. They're outlined under each school goal, and each school plan has between 4 to 5 goals aligned to the LCAP. Each plan also has a centralized service goal, and these are direct services to students and the educational support that are provided by district staff. The budget is at the end of each plan, and it outlines the proposed expenditures for these particular improvements for this year. I do want to bring to your attention, particular to the Sleepy Hollow plan, that we have a revised budget page for you to view. In processing the plans, the parent club's expenditures did not get registered in the appropriate locations. So I'd like to pass that budget page to you so you'll see where the parents clubs have approved and where the site council had approved where those expenditures would be. So based on the goals outlined in the Orinda LCAP plan, in the district curriculum plan, and pending district goals, the single plans provide a direction for us to move forward this year, preparing students for mastery of the Common Core standards in English, mathematics, science, in a safe school environment. And with what the future holds for the school plan, the Department of Education is looking at the LCAP template, they're looking at the school plan template and looking to make recommendations for further alignment of the plans. We'll have more information about that in the spring. They may have a different look next year. The principals are here tonight to respond to specific questions that pertains to any of their plans. And I will turn it over to
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions from the board, from the section?
Yeah, I have a question for Kathy. What you just mentioned about the state, now that we have LCAP, that the site plans are supposed to coordinate with the LCAP. I wonder if you could say a little more about that, because this is the first time we're in that situation. And so are there, how did that process work this year with the site plans?
So once the LCAP was adopted by the board in June, the goals of the LCAP were looked at carefully, and they were included, and you'll see at the top of the school plan template where it says district goal for each of the school plan goals. I were to give you an example, if you were just to look at page 179, or let's do goal 4, so let's look at the raise, you need to look at 172, for example. You'll see at the top that the subject is mathematics. The district goal is actually the LCAP goal in our LCAP plan. The school goal mirrors what the school needs to do to achieve that particular goal. Now, the LCAP goal is a 3-year goal, and this school goal is a 1-year goal, but they're looking at what they need to do. Similarly, however, though, this year, since we're all in transition, you'll find commonality in that school goal, as each of the schools is working to accomplish the same outcome. However, the actions on those pages may be different for the schools depending on where they are on that continuum. So, to answer your question, once the LCAP goals were approved, those were looked at, and then it was determined what would schools need to do in those particular areas.
Okay, thank you. I have one other question. For example, on page 166, there's a statement, since there was no state performance data regarding language arts for 2014, it's based on 2013. My question is, what about our district assessments? Or maybe they're in a different place, but I assume we still use those district assessments, even though we didn't have STAR data.
Mm-hmm. The results of those are found in the comprehensive needs assessment area, which on some plans may begin on page 3 or 4.
Okay, great, thank you.
Kathy, is there a way of structuring these? Because that was the one piece that I thought was the hardest to compare across schools, because everyone seems to present it a little differently. So is there a way to make that in our presentations? Look at that data easier?
Mm-hmm.
For, in the future?
Yes.
Are you thinking of like a spreadsheet?
Well, for example, on the API score, that is a sort of a spreadsheet that's very easy to compare, I think, a spreadsheet, or at least a continuity in how it's being presented.
Other questions from the board?
I have a question really directed at the principals. Just on, I would be interested to hear from each of the principals on how each school is using student data to provide individualized differentiation, you know, for improvement at all levels. So I don't know if anyone, you know, I see bits and pieces of that in all of the plans, and I thought it would be interesting to hear sort of what's, I don't know if it's being done the same way in every school, or if it's really individualized, and, you know, informative, and to hear that.
May I answer from a teacher perspective?
Principals come up.
Wants to come up.
He was going to be a positive answer.
Charles could probably answer better than we at this point.
Excuse me.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
So I'm assuming you're thinking of all of the things that we do across a year that drive instruction. And so, you know, when you think about assessment, there are two kinds. There's formative assessment and there's summative assessment. Formative assessment drives instruction. And so what you're used to seeing in STAR results, those are summative assessments. They're kind of like the outcome at the end. You know, how did we do? Formative assessments are what help us to differentiate. And so we use, in English language arts, for example, the Fountas and Fennell assessments where kids are leveled in their reading and then placed appropriately and moved along accordingly to their growth. There are math unit tests for every math unit, pre and post, and so from there, kids are differentiated into groupings and their workshop strategies to address each of those groups and how they're working. And I think that's the answer that you're looking for.
So is it done pretty much on like unit by unit basis sort of at the math level?
I think Kirsten has explained sort of the conceptual approach that teachers take. I think in terms of how it's done at the school site, I can only speak for Sleepy Hollow, but I think it's probably the same process at every school site. The teachers at the school where I work use their Monday common planning time. They have since August to go over those assessments, the kind that Kirsten, the formative and the evaluative. And then just recently, they brought it all together at Sleepy Hollow at the long-range planning. And then those documents became a blueprint to give the teachers essentially their goals for the particular groups of students, how the students who were accelerated, the students who were at benchmark, and the students who needed remediation. So the structure that the teachers use essentially, and I'm assuming it's the same, is the time that the teachers have to work together, either on a weekly basis or on a tri-monthly basis for their long-range planning. Do you have another
Is there
question?
sufficient time for them to do that? And so I assume that like you're basically looking at each kid as a teacher, and trying to target how to best, have each child reach their potential.
I can only speak anecdotally from my observations from the teachers at Sleepy Hollow. I think it's probably the same at every school, is that I think these conversations go on daily, and I think the teachers are meeting not just in common planning time and not just at long-range planning, but they're having these conversations as the work progresses day by day, week by week. I get feedback from teachers on these exact questions and how to address student needs on a weekly, daily basis.
I would just add that time is always an issue. Time is always an issue. There's never enough time to do this kind of work. They always need more time. And then we provide certain amounts of days to help with that assessment, but it's different depending on what grade level and how many students you have. I think that's something we could probably look at and do a better job with as we move on in the future. But time is needed when we're going to take this kind of approach to education. We have to provide time to do that work.
So I have one I wanted to say. It's nice to see highlights of not just with you folks, but also with the OIS, engineering practices, scientific, basically getting our kids hands-on versus, call it, the vocabulary of science. So I see that weaving into the fabric. And I guess my question, and Kathy weighing in as well, is how is the new BASI process and just all that's coming with that working? Just any feedback as well on, because I know they're helping define what we're now doing with the new standards and what have you too, so it's really exciting.
So at every grade level, we have third through fifth, we have the BASI leaders that have gone to multiple trainings, started last year. And as part of the ongoing collaboration and work that they do at grade level teams as well as district-wide, those teams have had opportunities to work together and to create a transitional plan in supporting where we are and where we're going as it relates to the next generation science standards. And so that work has begun, and it's an ongoing effort. If you look at the curriculum plan and the LCAP as well, the goal this year is to identify the vision of our science program by December, in hopes that come January and beyond that we build upon that and align those concepts or skills with the next generation science standards that go into effect in 2016 and 17. I don't know if you want to add to.
I'll add it. I'd say say the partnership with Bayside has really helped us to build the capacity. It started small 3 years ago with a small cohort. The following year it's another cohort, but they don't drop off the previous cohort. So we have different levels of teachers who have gone through the process and are giving back. And so we have a master's group, we have a teachers leadership academy, we have a district leadership group, because the belief is that everybody needs to be involved in the transition. And the Bayside has been supporting us in working K-8 with the vision by bringing teachers together at all levels from kindergarten through 8th grade. And we actually have our vision meeting again on October 27th. Bayside is also supporting us with the parent education component, which will happen in November. And so with that, they also provide stipends to teachers to have specific projects that they identify in the year for promoting and supporting the work. And so the cohort that we have this year will be in process to either do a professional development or do some collaborative work where Bayside helps guide them in that process, and also with their grant funds, give them a stipend to put the work in to do that. Is that?
Yeah. I wanted just to comment to the rest of the board too. I mean, there are districts that are struggling to figure out how to get traction on them with their existing curriculum and how to fold this in. And it's an example of where we're, let's say, ahead or behind depending on your perspective, but we're definitely charging forward with it in the right way in my view. And so it's good to see it weaved into the game plan. I know we have a very science-oriented community as well, so that was one thing I read that was had a lot of commonality through, and it shows even then when you get to OIS with their plan. It's important. Well, I just want to also say thank you for all three of you, and I don't see, there he is, standing up. Thank you for, this takes a lot of effort, and I know there's more behind it just than the four of you.
And I didn't mean to leave OIS out of my question, so I don't know if you have something to add on like more differentiation. And, obviously math is a little more obvious, but I'm even wondering within those classrooms if there's sort of even more differentiation going on, for example.
Yes, so very briefly, just like at the elementary schools, OAS does assess students in terms of their reading levels and provides differentiated instruction based on where the students are performing with respect to their reading. So within a classroom, you'll have a variety of students reading different books instead of a single class novel, and so the reading is differentiated in that way. Teachers are also accustomed to conferencing with students to provide very specific instruction on their particular needs. Also in core, the teachers do on-demand writing assessments with students, and based on how the students perform, they may have particular groups of students that need to work on a special skill, and so teachers can get those students together, help develop that skill, and differentiate that way. We also have an instructional assistant that works with students that need additional help in the core classes. With respect to math, you pointed out the obvious one with the different levels of mathematics, but even within the mathematics classes, the teachers give students performance tasks every 2 weeks, and they're a single question, so to speak, that are multi-steps, and based on how the students perform, the teachers have data on what they need to teach again, or whether or not they can go above and beyond with particular students. And then in science, it's a very project-based environment, and so students are given a project, and depending on where they are with respect to their science learning, they can access the project at a different level and can go above and beyond again based on their ability and skill. At 6th grade, in particular, throughout the lessons they have focus questions, and those focus questions allow students to respond and give feedback in terms of potential misconceptions that they may have in science, and it gives teachers data on where they can begin instruction and what things need to be reinforced in terms of the science learning. So we have different things in place in all subject areas.
Any comments from the public on this item?
Charles Shannon, President, second grade teacher. I will say that there's a lot more performance-based assessment where you're working with individual students performing a task, just as we just heard from Michael. It's a lot more time-consuming. In the Readers and Writers Workshop, we're also doing a lot of conferencing, so that's continual ongoing assessment as well. But it's a lot of one-on-one, and so our assessment environment has drastically changed and has created a lot of work on the part of the teacher to be focused on one child, while others are also engaged in this, workshop program. So it's not always so easy. We do our best. There's a lot of demands on our time, as you've heard from our distinguished principals tonight. Teachers do want to have additional time. We know time is one of those things that, everybody wishes they had more of. Again, we just do our best. I also want to say there's multiple measures besides the formal assessments that we all may be familiar with from our own childhood. We learn a lot about our students through just the work that they do and the conversations that we have, and from listening to our families, talk about what they see as they work with their children at home with the homework. So it's a really team approach to, what does this child know, and what are those, areas that we need to really support them. So I take pride in the fact that in Orinda, we have a lot of parents who really are involved as a part of the team and give us a lot of vital information. So I think that's a very wonderful thing that we have here. Thank you for the time.
Are there comments from the public on this item? Are there comments from the board?
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who worked on the site plans. Thank you to all the principals and all the parents and teachers that worked on the site plans. I know it's a lot of work.
Thank you. It was very informative, always. I really appreciate it. And I appreciated hearing about the differentiation strategies.
Thank you. Good motion on this item?
I'll move that we approve the 2014-15 single school plan for student achievement.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I think that was unanimous. Okay. Next action item C. Creation of an irrevocable trust to address other post-retirement benefit liability. Orinda.
I'm trying to wake up the PowerPoint here. Well, we don't want to show you that, do we? Let's see. Same thing, sorry. That one? Well, you're gonna get 2 slides at once, I think. I apologize.
Don't look over.
Yeah, don't look ahead, just look at the current one. Oh, actually, let me try this one thing. Let's see if this will work. No, oh, it did. Thank you, thank you.
So the board has asked the district administration to review options for addressing our district's OPEB liability. And we prepared an analysis that mirrors the analysis that you saw previously from the Akalani School District. So I'd like to show you a mirror image of the presentation, but with our numbers. So a little bit about other post-employment benefits, period, or OPEB, is that OPEB must be recognized as a current cost for the working years of your current employees. So the district has to identify and disclose OPEB as an expense. And if you're not pre-funding, it shows up as a liability in your financial statements, and it's included in your annual audit. This chart shows a breakdown of what our current post-employment benefits are according to our employment contracts. Because we're in CalPERS, CalPERS retiree benefits are lifetime benefits as part of our agreement with CalPERS, as in participating in the CalPERS program for our health benefits. We're required to provide lifetime benefits. Each year on January 1st, the employer mandated minimum amount increases on an annual basis. Currently, we pay $119 per month for our certificated retirees. And that amount will increase to $122 per month. Our classified are not held to this minimum requirement. It's a different arrangement, so it's actually the premium cost for our overage retirees on the classified side. This chart shows the age distribution of our retirees who were receiving health benefits, retiree benefits as of July 1st, 2012. So all the comparisons you'll see tonight are those that are included in our last actuarial study. So we're comparing apples to apples. So this is all included within our actuarial study. On tonight's agenda, there was an agreement to update our actuarial study, so we will have a new actuarial by the end of the fiscal year, which will be through July of 2014, but this is our most current actuarial, so the numbers that you will see were included in that report. The highlighted area, or the 65 and over, is the portion that is required due to our agreement with CalPERS, so you can see the numbers there. This chart shows an age and years of service breakdown of our employees who were employed as of July 1st, 2012. You can see the ages go down on the left-hand side and years of service across the chart to the right. According to our actuarial study, our pay-as-you-go for the 12-13 year was $359,859. Actuarial accrued liability was $11 million and 11.6, I should say. And our annual required contribution to meet our ARC, as they refer to it, would be about $1.5 million a year. When we compare the last two actuarial studies, you can see that both the pay-as-you-go and our accrued liability have increased, as well as our ARC, because we currently don't have a mechanism to hold those funds in an irrevocable trust currently, so these numbers continue to increase. When we look at the actuarial study and we look at the groups broken out that tie back to those numbers on the previous page, you can see the difference between the pre-65 and the over-65 numbers broken out. So this is the same, these are the same numbers on the previous slide, but broken out between pre-65 and post-65. According to our actuarial, our pay-as-you-go would look similar to this, and again, this was based on our employees as of July 1st, 2012, so the numbers have changed. And some of the benefits of pre-funding are that the earnings in the trust can help to reduce the overall OPEB costs. The employer discount rate assumption will be higher, which reduces our liability on the unfunded side. It prevents employer OPEB obligations from being a significant liability on our liability, or on our balance sheets, which are included in our audit reports. It lowers our unfunded liability amount, which could affect our rating if we go for a bond, if we try to sell bonds in order to do like construction bonds or GO bonds. If we have some pre-funding, then it helps our rating as a district. It also improves the financial security for our active employees and our retirees because we have money set aside to fund the retiree benefits into the future. So in conclusion, our health benefit costs for retirees between the ages of 49 and 65 continue to rise. The increases are at double-digit rates. And CalPERS statutory minimum rate for our retirees over the age of 65 has risen from $13.81 in 2004 to $119 per month per retiree in 2014. And this rate does increase every calendar year.
Questions from the board?
Can you tell us the amount or the range of amounts that are paid for classified employees per month or retiree health benefits?
Our classified, like they said in the presentation, we don't pay the $119 for a classified, so on a monthly basis, we pay between $295 to $1,197 per month per retiree on the classified side.
If you had to come up with an average in that range, what would you come up with?
The majority of them are around 300 to 500. We only have two that are over 900, so there's, well, the total amount is 17,000, and there's 36 of them, so if I put a calculator, I could divide it out.
I'm not sure my question's for Lorraine, but I was curious how this ended up being an action item. Exactly. But I remember we talked about getting this presentation, which thank you for that as far as information, but I'm trying to understand where the action piece comes into play tonight.
I had to put it on for action in case we wanted to take action.
You know, I have to second what Tyson said. I thought we agreed to get more information and have it come back with more information, but I didn't feel that we agreed as a board that we might get on for action. Of course, you know, as president, you can put something on for action, but it just was surprising to see the statement the way it's worded here implies that the board decided that we wanted it for action, and I thought we were getting more information. But aside from that, I have a question. Were you finished, Tyson?
Go ahead.
Obviously, we have a growing liability. It would be good to do something about it. But the piece that I'm not seeing in your presentation and in the materials that we've already received is with what funds would we fund this, this trust fund or whatever it is, special fund or trust fund, irrevocable trust fund. Where would the funds come from? And I thought what we might get tonight was if we put X amount of dollars in it, in 5 years, what's it gonna look like? In 10 years, what's it gonna look like? That kind of thing. So that's the part I'm still not sure, you know, how much are we considering putting in? I don't know if you have some recommendation, Lorraine? No, okay. And if there is some mention here about Fund 17, I thought that Fund 17 was one of the places where we put parcel tax funds. No? So what's in Fund 17? It mentions here we have one special reserve, Fund 17.
Fund 17 is a fund that is designated by the board that could be by board action, you could reallocate the funds for another purpose. Most of our other funds are all restricted by the funds that have been placed within those funds, so they wouldn't be available for this type of an expenditure. But Fund 17 is at the discretion of the board.
So how, the funds that are in Fund 17, where did they come from originally? How did they get there?
There's a combination of different deposits that have been made into Fund 17. During the time that the parcel taxes were being implemented, there was a contribution made to Fund 17. There were also residual funds in there from the startup of Wagner Ranch School, a special education settlement from mandated costs. The mandated cost claim, there was a big claim that was disputed at the state, and there was a payout of a significant amount of money to all schools within the state of California. And it looked as though the district put those funds into Fund 17 to start a special reserve fund for special purposes.
Okay,
So it's a combination of different types of funds, but they are all unrestricted. They're being restricted by the board in a special reserve fund.
Okay, so our regular parcel tax funds every year, are they going into a different fund? Where do they go?
Our parcel taxes are receipted within the general fund in a special resource code that's tracked separately from all of our other funds. So they're tracked within the general fund, and this has nothing to do with us.
Okay. I guess my question, just so everyone knows, is still where, with what funds would we consider funding this? And I am also curious, what are our other surrounding districts doing? I know you mentioned Occolani's has it, but what about Lafayette, Moraga, Walnut Creek? Do they have this type of fund?
Moraga and Walnut Creek do not have an irrevocable trust, and Lafayette is looking into an irrevocable trust, and they are interested in the trust that's being facilitated by CalPERS, which is the same firm that Occolani's is going with. They're still in the investigation process as far as I know. I don't know if their board recently took action, but the information I received last month was they were leaning towards CalPERS.
Do all four of those districts provide lifetime health benefits?
Occolani's is in CalPERS for their health care, as their health care provider. I don't believe Moraga is with CalPERS, and I'm not sure about Lafayette.
And Walnut Creek, yeah.
I'm not sure about one.
So they might have a very different liability.
So Tyson, my memory of our last meeting was that we wanted to get more information about OPEB with the goal of creating an irrevocable trust. So that's why I thought it was put on for action. I thought we were presented with all the Occolani's numbers. So I thought we asked for our numbers to be plugged into there with the goal of creating an irrevocable trust here. So that's my understanding. I was expecting one for action.
I wasn't.
So then going back to the lifetime health benefit, what portion, we have like an 11.7 million liability, or that was at least from 2012, so the number presumably is higher. But do you know what portion of that money is, because this slide we don't have, do we have this in our packet?
We don't have it in our packet.
Okay, so
Yeah,
does this show what, okay, so this is showing that of the 11 point, almost 7 million, almost 9.5 million is for the post age 65 health benefits.
Right.
So if we only provided health benefits up to age 65, our liability right now would be, our unfunded liability would be 2.225.
Correct, based on the actuarial that was done 2 years ago.
And 83% of districts do not provide lifetime health benefits. That's my understanding, based on a study that was done by college starters. Okay, so we have a big liability.
Yeah, and a question about the 2-year OPEB liability comparison. I don't know if that's the one before or after this one. There. So am I right in saying that, so from July 2010 to July 2012, so if we were paying our actual liability, not just the pay-as-you-go, that number has increased by 350, over 300,000? So by waiting, I mean, in 2 years, in the passage of 2 year time, I mean, that's an extra $300,000+ a year.
Right, and it does take into account the employees that you have on that date. So some of the numbers can be skewed based on, I mean, it's hard to compare the two reports completely 100% because people could have quit in between, and so your age and your years of service change because they look at the employees that you have on that date. What are their age? How many years of service do they have with you? And then they project out their retirement date. So they didn't compare the same staff in the two reports, but it's safe to make the assumption you make that there are some variables that are included in that.
And what does the annual required contribution show?
What that shows is how much you should be setting aside in order to meet your future liability.
So Avalani's is not even close to that.
No. But any amount of money that is set aside in an irrevocable trust will lower your accrued liability because you're showing a good faith effort to set the money aside. So it proportionately reduces these numbers based on the fact that you're establishing a trust.
Just for some context, so I've been on the board for 6 years. 6 years ago, I think it came up on an audit, and the board expressed an interest in setting up an irrevocable trust, and it's right when the economy crashed. So, you know, my memory was that it didn't make sense at the time for the board to try and set aside savings when the state's decimating our budget. So I know that in the last 3 years, we've had conversations as a board about starting to fund our unfunded liability. Obviously, there are different ways you can fund an unfunded liability, but it's been a consistent theme of the board, and I'm happy to see it on the agenda. I'm glad that we're having a discussion because this liability is growing and growing. We look worse and worse in an audit. It really will, for those people that want to go out for a bond for our aging facilities, it really, we pay a much higher interest rate if we don't start to set some money aside for our unfunded liability. And I'll only speak for myself, but as an individual member of the Board of Trustees, it's unconscionable for me to not have some money set aside. An unfunded liability is not, it's not acceptable to me. So it's really important to me as an individual member of the board that we start to set some money aside. I think the best way to do it is an irrevocable trust. I think the two advantages that I can think of with the irrevocable trust, one are the ability to make significant interest on our investments, and number two, to remember that if the state goes into lean years again, and I don't trust the state will be able to avoid boom-bust cycles, that we do have the ability to go into any money we set into irrevocable trust and use it for, quote, pay-as-you-go. So that money, we do have a lot of flexibility with the money if we do go into the irrevocable trust because we can use it in lean times to make our contributions for pay-as-you-go. But we just see that the pay-as-you-go is going up significantly. The AAL is going up. I'm going to call it astronomically, but that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but really significant. $2.5 million over 2 years. It's a huge amount of money for a district with a, let's call it a $24 million a year budget, and the ARC obviously is going up by huge amounts. So I think the first step in starting to set money aside, which isn't part of this discussion, amounts of money, this discussion is about creating irrevocable trust so we can start to address the OPEB liability. That's my understanding where I am with it.
Well, I agree that I do think it's, you know, it's an increasing liability and ever increasing liability.
Not only unfunded, but unfunded increasing.
That's right, and even under pay-as-you-go, it's going to be increasing. I mean, even now, it's probably at 450,000. Is that the number that we were, I mean, I know these numbers are based on
457.
457, so that's, 100,000 more than it was 2 years ago.
Gotta find that sheet.
And all the other numbers, like Matt pointed out, go up as well. So I do think, some part of me wondered, well, why did the board, prior boards in the way past let this go? But then I see, it was $13 a month for health benefits. Maybe that was a different conversation back then versus what we're looking at now. I think it's more a question of what do we set up and how do we do it in a way that makes sense and gives us a comfort level. And Lorraine, if we put some money aside, can you talk about the kind of flexibility we have with that? I mean, I know it's designated for retiree health benefits. But do we have flexibility on how much we contribute, how much we have to retain in there, how much we can use it, when we can use it, things like that?
This is for your irrevocable trust.
Or, yes.
Because there's also the possibility of the other type of fund, and I'd like to hear about that too.
So I went to a presentation on the CalPERS program last week, and so the information I can share with you pertains to their program. I'm not sure if the other programs are outlined the same, but with their program, there's no minimum amount to be deposited on account. It doesn't have to be annual contributions of a set amount. It doesn't have. You can contribute 1 year and not contribute the next, or there's no obligation.
Could you contribute once and never contribute
Right.
again?
You could. And as Matt stated, if you wanted to pay your monthly retiree payment using those funds in a lean year, you have the ability to do that. The district would pay the invoice to the vendor and then turn in, it's like on a reimbursement basis to the irrevocable trust, so that money can be used to pay your monthly retiree benefit payment on a reimbursement basis.
So that would come out of your general fund and then get reimbursed?
Correct.
Back into your general fund?
Correct. Correct. Or you can just leave it there to earn interest to help offset your future obligations. So it's fairly flexible, but the money can only be used for retiree benefits when it's placed in an irrevocable trust, and it can't be withdrawn for any other purpose. But the only way to reduce your liability on your actuarial studies is if you place the money in an irrevocable trust, because that way it's guaranteed to only be used for that purpose. To Sarah's question, there are other ways to set up retiree benefit accounts. You can, we have the ability to set up a fund within our district financial system that could be set up for retiree benefits. But it would be similar to Fund 17, where at board discretion you can move money in and out, and it's not forever and ever bound to go towards retiree benefits. And so a Fund 20 would not reduce your liability on your actuarial study. So there's also ways where we have our vacation contingency that's within our general fund. You could also set up a retiree contingency within your general fund as well. But then again, that would be flexible money in and out and not be considered meeting your long-term liability as far as your actuarial is concerned, and it would not reduce your liability. It wouldn't be treated as a commitment to retiree benefits.
Are there differences in how you would be investing the money depending on the form of trust or a fund?
In the general fund, or if we established a fund within our district financial system, if we created a retiree fund, we would be held to either Lease to invest the money in, or the county treasury, which is right now like 0.25% interest. At the presentation that CalPERS provided, there are different tiers of programs that you can have your irrevocable trust placed within. Some have higher potential of higher interest. Some have lower potential of increased interest. The district can elect which tier they would like their funds deposited within, and they have the ability to change their mind throughout the process as well. It's not an irrevocable choice, it's the district's choice.
Isn't like the conservative number on these like 4%?
Yes.
On the irrevocables?
Mhm.
So 16 times
Right,
what the county's offering us?
right.
And what was the other option for the fund money, or?
That LAI.
Lease.
Oh, back there.
Local agency investment fund, I think is what that stands for. We,
.0000.
and we do, we do put some of our money into Lease. Some of our money that's just sitting in some of our funds, like part of our Fund 40 is in Lease, and that's why you get the quarterly reports that show the interest rate and the interest that's earned on those funds. And back in the day, Lease used to earn some good dividends, but currently it's a quarter of a percent.
But all the could go up over time, go up right now.
And inching.
So I'm assuming Fund 20, there's really no cost to us, it's more of just a mechanism by which the district internally manages money. Are there costs to the district to set this up? Irrevocable, one-time
Yes.
costs or ongoing costs? Or?
There is and I apologize, I didn't bring the CalPERS information with me, but it's less than 0.5% of the money, I believe, that you have on the account. So it's a percentage of what you have with them that they charge.
They take a rate.
So is the idea to put just enough to keep paying it out? Or it seems like, I get the whole vehicle of why it's created and what it does on your balance sheet and make you look good on paper and all that, but if you're getting dinged for actually paying it down, right, I'm just, it's the pros and cons of all this, that's why I didn't think it was on for action, is that it's like, I can't look at this as purely, if I go conceptually, right, just for the goodness of what it does, that's one thing, but I'm looking at, okay, well, how are we really gonna pay this debt down too? Because that's the other thing that is, quite frankly, just right alongside this issue. So where the money comes from, how much we pay, how this looks over time, because if we're still putting in just enough every year to then pay as you go, what we're doing in this vehicle, is that we're just setting it up. So I'm trying to understand the intent of, if the board's looking at setting it up just to make the paper look good, to have this, or if they're setting it up to actually cheat this thing down, then what is the cost that we're gonna incur for actually trying to buy it down? I know you don't have those hard numbers, because that's more of a broader discussion on how much money and how fast and.
No, but it's very
Well, I
important
think
to
what
where
you're
we
doing
are
is
right
you're
now.
trying to put money aside and still be basically paying as you go, because until you, I think the ultimate goal would be that you're,
Right.
right. But the reality of slowly putting money aside, I don't really care, about does it look good or not, I care
Well, no, it's
about.
not even, I guess the wrong
Well,
wording.
I think you're
It's
still
also
paying
the-
as you go out of your general fund, it's just that if for some reason there was an emergency, you would have
Yeah.
that money that you could use for
For
reducing
retirement,
that.
right.
For retirement, but you can see, I mean, you know, that's $500,000 this year and $800,000.
No, I get this, I guess, I'm just really looking at it from the perspective of, you know, coming on the board, reserves set at 9%. All the audit paperwork, we set it at, basically 3 to qualify and post well and keep the whole machine going. And recognize 3% is much, especially with deferrals and everything that's happened. So I'm looking at this more of a conversation of if you set it and you're basically restricting this money, then where is that coming from in the overall fabric? Is it additive to the 9 that the board is looking at? Because now you've got this reserve factor and just retirement restriction, then you've still marched forward with 9% in terms of special rainy day issue, whatever. So I'm looking at this as more of a discussion on the broader terms than just, because I agree with the fact that this is a good idea if you're trying to, A, deal with the, call it audit cycle or actuarial deal that comes with this, but at the end of the game, where I'm more on Sarah's point earlier, where's the money coming from?
But that's not what we're looking at now.
Well, I guess
That's a
that's,
completely
that's,
separate
What do you
discussion.
mean, it's not what
but I think it is, you're setting up something, so I'm trying to understand the motivation to set it up outside of just to set it up to have it on paper. So if you're setting something up, there's gotta be a dialogue on what you're actually gonna put in it.
And I see that as a separate discussion.
Yeah, but why not talk about it a little bit now? I don't understand.
Because that's not on the agenda, though.
Well, the purpose of setting this up is to set aside money. So it is on the agenda, it is part of the discussion about why you would set it up and why you set it up this way versus a different type of fund.
So do you think setting up an irrevocable trust is a good idea?
Do I? I'm wanting to hear if we put money in it, how far down are we paying, what's it costing us, what's it gonna look like in 5 years or 10 years? And how is it better, we are setting aside money that we can't use for anything else. So,
That we have to pay anyway.
yeah, so how much money are we talking about? I mean, I don't know if you're talking about the $359,000, or you're hoping for more or less, or what are we talking
Can you let
about?
us know
We
what's-
aren't even
I mean,
having
just-
that conversation.
Just to, use Avaloni's as a benchmark, because I think their overall liability was somewhat, a little higher, but, you just tell us how much, I know they've had it for a while, so they've been paying in a little bit over time, but.
Alkalies has contributed $385,000.
Since when did they open it?
How much have they been contributing each time?
In August 2010, they contributed $130,000, that's what they started off with. In August of 2011, they contributed another $100,000. March 2012, they added $70,000. And in June 2012, they added $85,000. In addition to that, they have interest earnings of $139,000. And they paid out $1,600 in fees.
Have they contributed since June 2012?
No. Well, not from the information I was provided. That was as of, the last date that they had registered is March 31st, 2014. And that was part of their presentation that they had made to their board.
And I think that's an example of why, or to Tyson's point, if you make the conversation about how are you gonna fund this, how are we gonna pay off 11.7 million, you're never gonna start, because it's too overwhelming of a number. And so, having a vehicle to put money into, they did $70,000 at a time. And obviously that's gonna be a separate board action, I assume, at every point of the way. So it's not just a one-time conversation. I'll say for myself, I'm not interested in setting up a fund that pulls in, X amount of dollars every single year into perpetuity. I mean, I think it's a conversation that happens probably every year. I mean, and so the board makes that decision on how much money gets put into it. But I really see it as, when we hire an employee, we tell them, we're gonna pay you this year, and we're also gonna pay you, some health benefits when you retire. And the math gets tricky because they retire, 30-plus years later, but it's something that we agree to the day we hire someone. And so I think it's unreasonable to wait 30 years to try and figure out where the money's gonna come from for a promise that you make today. So I'm fully in favor of setting up an irrevocable trust. And then, how many dollars and what period of time we put in dollars, I agree with Matt, I think is a separate discussion.
Well, so I hear what you're saying, Chris. I guess when I think of taking action, I think of actually being presented with choices. Right,
Well,
right now, we don't even have choices as
So
to
if
what.
it still bothers you that it's on for action, I think you can.
Well, no, I'm just trying to, if I take action on something, I'm thinking there's actually a presentation of this is what you're gonna go get. And so all I'm hearing is this is the CalPERS
Right.
spiel of what we have.
I think the only thing that we could possibly take action on tonight is to say in concept that we want to start an irrevocable trust. But there's no sign of the dotted line here in front of us right now anyway. So I think this is mostly a discussion. But I wanted it on for action in case we wanted to take action to say, let's set it up and we'll sign on the dotted line next month.
Like, I see the benefits of having it, there's no question, and I understand the logic of why you would have it in place. I don't disagree with that at all. I guess I also just, I wanna make sure when something's set up that we're not just putting $1 in it. And it was great that we set it up, right? I mean, it seems to me that it's, whether I agree with what Akalani's is doing, I mean, I know their budget issues and as well as ours, so I'm looking at it, tying them together. I can't really pull them apart.
But again, I think this is a 30-year solution in the works. I mean,
Well, if that, I mean, I'm looking at that, it's.
whatever. So it's
30.
not something that we're going to solve this month or next month. I mean, again, I'm hoping we can take a step, which I think is in the right direction of setting up a trust, and then we'll have another hard discussion about where we find dollars from and whatnot. And if it's $1, it's $1. If it's more than that, it's more than that.
At some level, it is responsible not to be saving money for this, because this is an obligation that we have.
It's not even saving money. I mean, I think it's just, and we chronically underpay what we promise every year. And so, someone's got to fulfill that promise eventually.
Right, we accrue it, we just.
And somewhere down the road.
I totally get it.
Right.
Okay, well, I think we've had a good discussion here. Is there any comments from the public on this item? Any?
Nadine Baroque, I'm the parent at Glorietta, and I'm listening to the dialogue and I'm listening to the information provided, and I'm hearing that we're setting up an irrevocable trust and magically it's a silver bullet that's going to fix this problem. That's the way it's coming across. And I don't know, when I'm planning a financial action for myself personally, I need to do research and figure out what my options are. I need to figure out what my scenario analysis is, what impacts my decisions will make. And it feels to me like you haven't done that. the information you provided, you just, you had to ask the question about what's the cost of the funds. You haven't been provided with I think you got provided with 3 different providers, but you don't know what their different requirements, restrictions, or costs are. And yet you're just saying, should we provide an irrevocable trust? Should we set up an irrevocable trust? Yeah, let's set up an irrevocable trust. I personally have not heard an extensive analysis to make that decision. If I were in your seat, I wouldn't have enough information to make that decision. You haven't explored what your funding sources are, what funds are available, where the money's coming from, which types of funds you can tap into, what those funds are being used, what that money is being used for otherwise, whether you're pay as you go, or you're going to just take the money from the general fund and put it into the irrevocable trust, and that's it. Why are you paying 1% if that's what you're 0.5% if that's what you're doing? I think that there needs to be, I think this item should be explored further before you just blanketly say, yes, let's create an irrevocable trust. That's my opinion.
Any comments from the public on this item?
Charles Shanoye, President. I think too that it's important to have the 2 conversations at once because that can influence the vote. If it's a lot of money that some of you want to put in the trust initially, or maybe ongoing, that could change people's viewpoint on whether we start now versus let's get more information. And I think it's strategic that the 2 issues are being divided because I see that there is support of an irrevocable trust, but yet people are kind of concerned about the amount of money that's going to be put in. So why separate the 2 issues? Why not just be honest with each other and say, there are some numbers on your minds, but you don't want to let the others know because you first want to approve the irrevocable trust and then the rest will be a piece of cake, potentially, with a board majority. So I just see it as a very strategic move on your part.
Other comments from the public on this item? Further discussion from the board?
Yeah, I would like to say again, I don't think I've heard enough about the alternative, this Fund 20. And even though an irrevocable trust means that it looks better to the GASB 45 and all that, your accounting process, I'm not convinced that that's the perfect way to go. And it's also, I also feel like it doesn't have to be one trust. I mean, we could also be talking about setting up 2 separate things. We could have a Fund 20 and an irrevocable trust. It's just, we're not really talking about the difference there. And, 4% isn't a lot of interest. It's, I don't know, just, there's a lot of variables here, and I just feel like there, as she pointed out, there's a lot of questions that, sure, it would be good to do this, but look at Oklahoma, they don't have that much money in there, and they started it 4 years ago. So it's not like it's gonna instantly, sure, it's better than nothing, but, it does feel rushed to me. I don't know why we're feeling rushed with, it doesn't feel like very good information on exactly what we're gonna do. I feel better knowing more information about where we wanna go with this than just seeing what Oakland's did and even these numbers about our retiree benefits. I wanna see if we put in $100,000, then where does that look in 5 years? Or if we put in $300,000, what is that gonna look like in 5 years? What's it gonna cost us? What's the interest rate? Which different provider or company would we wanna go? Those kind of things before, I think that's part of the decision. I think it's better to have all the information and make a good decision rather than do it piecemeal. So that's just my opinion.
Do we know, in the rates, how all the set aside Fund 20 or another, how our auditors, the only one is an irrevocable trust, right? And if it's set up, it's just check the box, even if it doesn't actually pay down any of the 11, well, the growing number.
No, can't be.
The amount of the money that you have in an irrevocable trust proportionately lowers the percentages that they use when they do the actuarial, so your unfunded liability would go down proportionately.
Yeah,
Just by whatever's in it.
By whatever's in it.
necessarily.
Not necessarily,
Or the percentage of it.
Right.
or something. Yeah, but if you put in $100,000 and your liability is $11 million, it's just gonna be a tiny bit of improvement according to your actuarial.
it
study.
would, but then you're also earning interest at a higher rate, which then that interest then is calculated in the unfunded liability moving out as well. So it's not just the amount of money that you have sitting in that account, but the estimated accrued interest that you're going to earn on that money would be included in the calculation of the actuarial. So it's not dollar for dollar, it's not a straight across the board calculation. That's factored into the variables that they use when they calculate your actuarial.
But the interest rate that we would get in the Fund 20, I thought is extraordinarily low.
In a Fund 20, you would get no credit whatsoever on your actuarial.
Okay, no, so you're talking about irrevocable trust.
Right. I'm sorry if that was confusing.
Yeah, no,
No,
I
no.
understood that.
Yeah, the Fund 20 would just be whatever rate that we're getting with the county with all of the money that's.
But Fund 20 won't show on your actuarial at all.
Okay.
You get no credit whatsoever in Fund 20 or set aside in your general fund, as far as your actuarial is concerned.
Which is why, in my opinion, Fund 20 makes like 0 sense, because it's just moving money from one part of the budget to another part of the budget. You make no extra interest, and it's not necessarily designated for any particular purpose. I mean, we say it's for this, but it's just a click of a button for it to go to something else.
Or the whim of the board.
Well, these other funds that we have written descriptions, I mean, we have 6 different funds.
Well, some of them are legally managed.
Sure, some of them are, but, with Fund 17, she just described it as certain funds put in there, it doesn't seem that that's legally restricted.
That's the only one that the board has that is not legally restricted, other than Fund 67, which is that insurance fund that's not a full-time money.
I don't want to rehash old ground, but I thought at the last meeting, we had majority consensus to go the irrevocable trust route, and not the Fund 20 or other route. So I was operating under the assumption that that's the direction that the board was going with the irrevocable trust. Again, to me, that's the only one that makes any sense at all. You're not going to do an irrevocable trust, and there's no sense having a hard conversation of you're talking about how much money you want to put in, how much do they, because who cares? Because you can change your mind tomorrow. So why even go through that exercise?
So there's no upfront cost for these? Like, if you don't put any money in, you don't have to pay out?
Probably pay something to set it up.
To create the account, you would have to deposit money into the irrevocable trust and creating the trust.
Is there a minimum amount?
No. No, well, I can only speak for the presentation I attended. There are other companies that provide the service of an irrevocable trust, and so each one is unique. So that information, I don't know, can come back.
I guess, I mean, that's,
And you pay a fee, fine, you pay the 0.5%.
I get it, I'm just trying to figure out.
It's less than
But you
0.5.
get in, what's that?
It's a little less than 0.5 because it,
So a little less than 0.5%, but
You get an
on an
honor
average
after
year, you get 4% or more, whatever that number's gonna be. So you're saving money, you're paying down your liability by putting money in this. It's not actually a cost.
I understand the vehicle, I guess I'm just trying to understand the options within all of the vehicles and how they're actually gonna be funded. Because it's, I mean, I can go down to the bank and get a safety deposit box, but I don't have any to put in it, because I have a safe at home, so, why don't I go pay $25? But I still have some valuable things that maybe I should go put in there, so, I understand the reasons and why it works, and I totally get it. But I'm also, like to know why it's being set up specifically more than just to deal with the audit situation, basically. And long-term, 4%, 0.5%, I mean, it's not about the percent return. If it's just to set it up so that it's an audit thing, is that, I mean,
They set it up to put money in it, so that
They
you
set it
can
up for
save,
money.
so that you can help fund that liability, so that in 20 years.
It doesn't change your audit,
Put it
it's
down
it's your
there
money.
in 20 years. So if you put in,
help
so right now we have
long-term
pay as
fiscal
you
health
go.
of the district.
Right now we have pay as you go, 359,000. So that comes, Lorraine, does that come out of general fund?
Yes.
And so,
457,000.
what's that?
457,000.
Okay. So looking at this.
Almost $500,000.
Next year over half a million.
So what do you guys anticipate putting in the trust fund if we set it up?
I anticipate the five of us as a board getting together and talking about it after we set up the trust. And it just, Sarah,
I mean, it's something, obviously, I mean, I'll throw a number out there because you want a number. I mean, obviously something more than 457,711. Because if you don't put in, I mean, actually, I don't know how much we have, if you pay at the beginning of the year, end of the year, how it works, but for the year,
pay them interest.
for the year, you'd have to put in at least 457,711. And then any dollar after that, yeah, like Matt said, we have a discussion. If it's $2 more or $3 more or,
I think any dollar over dollar one would be on discussion.
And Alcoa
Well,
is
obviously.
clearly put in less than their pay as you go.
right.
And I do see a note from Alcolani's that they're depositing 1% of their payroll for the current year. They plan to make another deposit to their trust, in the equivalent to 1% of their payroll for the 14-15 year.
So Sarah,
It's probably not their pay as you go.
Sarah, my position about not talking about the dollars is, I want to get the trust set up. And I'm convinced that this is the best way for us to start to fund an unfunded growing liability. That's it. And I think that by what I'll call muddy in the waters, but I think that you have legitimate interest to talk about dollars, because I think that's how you process this stuff. I process it by, let's set up an irrevocable trust, and then let's sit down and have a discussion. Because I think by trying to throw numbers around, all we do is muddy the waters to the point where we never set up an irrevocable trust.
And every year this gets to be a bigger problem.
And it felt like we had that discussion last month. That we had at least three of us that felt like the way to handle this thing was to set up an irrevocable trust.
And this is something we have been talking about for 3 years, at least.
Well, I haven't been on board for 3 years, but I do have.
It is what it is. You know, you either continue to ignore it or you deal with it.
And again, these are promises that we've already made. We've committed to,
Well, I guess I'm looking at it like this, it's so urgent to set up this trust, yet the board didn't want to put on for action, having the discussion of, for the years that I've been here, right? How are we gonna pay this down?
say that again?
It's so urgent now to put an irrevocable trust, is what I'm feeling, yet, as long as I've been on the board, we haven't wanted to have the discussion how we're actually gonna pay for it. And where the money's gonna come from, and figure out what that amount is, and talk about how we're actually gonna, where we're gonna land, because these numbers don't really change too much if you just do 457 or 544, right? So,
Well, I think, you know, it's
I mean,
been
I
hard.
understand you wanna start to put something on, and I get that, but it just doesn't, it feels like it's there's a cart and horse issue. It's like, let's figure out what we're gonna do, and and then great, we can go get the vehicle when we know we can do it.
And then my response to that would be, if we figure out what we want to do, if we start that, that's, that's the non-progression that we've made for the last 3 years.
Well, no, we haven't had the discussion, it's just been adopt a budget and ignore the pay-as-you-go model.
I see it more as, more dealing with budget issues in the past, and this is finally maybe a time when we can have a serious conversation about this. Not to say that we're rolling in money, but to say that at least we're looking at a more positive outlook. And it is a significant liability. Do we want to deal with it?
Well, just setting up a trust account isn't dealing with it, it's just setting up a trust account. Dealing with
Setting
it is
up the trust
putting
account
money
money
aside.
That's the next
Yeah, so
conversation
that's,
we'd have to have.
Well, and I guess all I'm hearing you, Sarah, is we're not, the action isn't to set one up, it's to still figure out what we're gonna set up. Because there's different companies out there that do it, there's different returns, there's a lot. So I guess I gotta understand what, still seeing this as an action item is like, okay, what am I taking action on?
Okay, well, we'll move on to something else. And I hear the majority of the board, so I'll take notes and bring that back to staff, that for next month, I think we have a majority of the board that would like to see a revocable trust that we can take action on, and a choice of which one might be the best one, and we will have a discussion on options for funding. Kathy, much less controversial. Tobacco-free schools.
Yes, so this policy
Depends on who's here.
this policy is coming to you as a second reading for your approval. It was first read at the last meeting, September 8th. And the reason that it's coming forward is that it needs to be current. So language has been included that we discussed at the last meeting to make it current, not only for the 2P grant that we have, but in general, so that we are current on being tobacco-free in our district. There are no changes to this policy from the first reading, so it's being presented to you as it was the last meeting.
Questions from the board? Any comments from the public on this item? Further discussion from the board? For a motion?
I move we approve Board Policy 3513.3, tobacco-free schools.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Discussion item H. Sarah, you had a question about the Apple Inc. lease computer equipment.
Yes, thank you. So it's item H regarding the computers at Wagner Ranch. It talks about that they currently have 2 mobile carts for 3rd and 5th grade, and then that they are going to buy, that they discussed purchasing versus leasing, and they decided to lease. But 23 MacBooks and 30 iPads. My question was, it says the Parents Club is paying for it, and Dr. Jaconet explained to me that even though the contract is with the district, that the Parents Club is reimbursing the district for this. But I'm wondering, is this typical of what's happening at every Parents Club? And it wasn't clear to me whether this is replacing the computers that they already have, or is this buying additional computers? And I just want to better understand it because I know that technology is very important to our country and to our district. Thank you.
Okay. Raymond has an answer to that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So this is to replace an existing cart. Their cart of existing MacBooks are several years old and falling apart, and so they are replacing that cart.
Okay, so they're gonna lease them instead of what they have there to replace it, okay. Great. And that's just for 3rd to 5th grade, it says, so. Okay, well, thank you very much, that's all I wanted to know, thank you.
Any comments from the public on this item? Any other questions or discussion from the board?
Should have leased my iPhone.
Yeah.
I do think so.
You do?
Is there a motion to move on this item?
I move that we approve item H, agreement with Apple to lease computer equipment for the ranch.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. While we're getting set up here, I'm just gonna have us take a 5-minute quick break and then we'll be fresh.